Okay, so, and of course, I don't have all the notes and stuff I would normally prepare for a show like this, but I've covered it a thousand times before. Those of you who'd like all the detailed background, the many, many pieces of legal analysis I've previously done in this case, you can always point your browser to lawofselfdefense.com/Baldwin, lawofselfdefense.com/Baldwin, and there we have everything I've done for the law of self-defense community on Alec Baldwin. Is aggregated there, so you can read all of it there. But essentially the facts are that Alec Baldwin was on the set of a low-budget Western movie called Rust. He was the lead. He was the star in the movie. He was also at least an executive producer, I believe, for the movie. But he was playing the lead role character, whose name I believe was Rust, hence the title of the movie. And he was doing a scene inside a church where he was holding a single-action Western-style revolver. He was getting ready for filming. The cinematographer was directing him going through various motions while she stood behind the camera in preparation for filming. And part of this involved him drawing a pistol and pointing it in her general direction. And unfortunately, at one point he did that, and the pistol discharged, fired a live round, a bullet into Helena Hutchins, mortally wounding her. She died as a result. And of course, lawsuits and criminal charges resulted. Surprisingly, to some, against Alec Baldwin. Certainly surprising me that he was charged, not because of anything having to do with the legal merits, but because of the politics involved. This area, I mean, New Mexico generally is pretty liberal. This area around the Taos, New Mexico area is liberal even for New Mexico. They're also desperately interested in having more movies come out there. It's not New Mexico is not a wealthy state. This is not really a wealthy area, and they want more movie industry work there. And it would seem that if you start prosecuting big Hollywood stars, even kind of B-rated stars like Alec Baldwin, you would discourage the movie industry from doing more filming there. So I was surprised from a political perspective that he was charged at all. On the legal merits, this has always been a clear-cut case of involuntary manslaughter based on recklessness. So involuntary meaning he didn't intend to kill Helena Hutchins, but he was reckless. Reckless is a mens rea, a state of mind sufficient for criminal liability. Just below recklessness, we have mere negligence. I mean, for summary purposes, kind of the levels of mens rea start at 0, where something is a genuine accident, meaning there was really no way for you to know, no way for you to knowledgeably prevent a bad thing from happening. That's a genuine accident. There's 0 legal liability for a genuine accident. Then we have negligence. Negligence is a mental state where you didn't know you were creating a risk, but you should have known. You were acting unreasonably. A reasonable person in your circumstances would have known you were creating a risk, and then you have civil liability for that risk, but not criminal liability. The next step up in terms of state of mind is recklessness. Recklessness is where you knew you were creating an unjustified risk of death to others, and you did it anyway, and someone died. So you didn't intend for them to die, but the mental state of recklessness is sufficient to warrant criminal liability. And then, of course, above that, you'd have an intentional killing if Alec Baldwin had, wanted to kill Helena Hutchins, which there's never been any evidence to suggest that, of course. But what we have here is recklessness. Why do we have recklessness and not mere negligence? Because anytime you're handling an inherently dangerous instrument, recklessness applies because of the inherent danger. It's simply not accepted that a reasonable person could not know that what they were doing was dangerous. And inherently dangerous instruments are things like explosives, poisons, medicines, dangerous medicines, and of course, guns. Everybody knows guns are dangerous, especially Alec Baldwin, who's on the board of a gun control organization that exists because guns are dangerous. And he knew he was handling a real firearm. He never contested that at all. He conceded that, in fact, when he first talked to police. And anybody knows if you're pointing a real gun at another person, you're creating a risk of death to them, unless you first ensure that the gun did not contain any live ammo. If you haven't ensured it doesn't contain ammo, you're creating an unjustified risk of death, which is the legal definition of recklessness. And then if death results, well, you just committed reckless homicide, which is voluntary manslaughter. So that's always been the case. I believe I wrote my first analysis of the shooting the day of, or maybe the day after it happened. And that was my conclusion then, and it's only been reinforced ever since. Now, what this exposes, of course, is that whether a criminal charge is appropriate on the legal merits, and a voluntary manslaughter charge against Alec Baldwin is appropriate on the legal merits every day of the week and twice on Sunday, is one question. A completely separate question is, well, does the prosecutor want to bring the charge? Because they don't have to. It's entirely within their discretion if they want to bring a charge or not. And frankly, I was, again, shocked, given the politics, that the prosecutor here decided to bring charges. I suspect, I mean, I'm mind reading now, so give this the weight it's worth, which isn't much. But I do know that the prosecutor is very much on the gun control side of things in terms of her politics. And she may have seen this as, may have made a sudden, abrupt decision to use this as an example that she goes after all bad gun uses, all irresponsible gun uses. No one's above the law. In fact, I believe she made that statement. No one's above the law when she brought the criminal charges. And then I think things may have gotten more complicated for her politically. It took her a year, my recollection is, to actually decide to bring charges. Then when she did, she appointed a special prosecutor. Then it turned out the special prosecutor she appointed could not actually have that job because she was also a legislator, and you can't do both. So that special prosecutor had to leave. They appointed another special prosecutor a short while ago, and now we're at today, where the charge has been dismissed against Alec Baldwin. Now, Alec Baldwin had hired extremely capable attorneys. I don't think, they can't change the legal merits of the case, but they were very, very good in the filings I saw them make in court, about as sharp as you could possibly hope for. And they would have been smart enough to play not just the legal angles, but the political angles as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we were to learn, for example, that Alec Baldwin's agreed to come back to New Mexico and give some gun safety talks on behalf of the prosecutor in this jurisdiction. That would satisfy her gun safety, gun control concerns, without her having to actually prosecute him. Now, the armorer on the set, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, a very young woman. Her father is a famous Hollywood armorer, and she was just getting into the business when all this happened. Apparently, by all appearances, not very responsibly. And she's been charged with involuntary manslaughter as well. Just occurred to me, I may have said voluntary manslaughter before. Anytime you hear me say voluntary manslaughter with respect to this case, I'm just misspeaking. Involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter would be when you actually intended to hurt the person. Involuntary manslaughter is lack of intent to hurt them, but reckless conduct resulting in the harm. So involuntary manslaughter.